And today I'm going to talk about a new approach to collaborative data science with the Ballet framework. My name is Micah Smith. I'm a PhD student in ECS and LIDS. And the work I'm talking about here is joint with Jürgen Sito, Kelvin Liu, and my advisor, Kalyan Veeramachaneni in the Data to AI Lab. So before I get started, I want to warn you that this talk is maybe unlike others that are appearing in the conference. There's no theorems, proofs, or guarantees, so I know that might make some of us sad, but I'm happy to say that I might be teaching you a thing or two about human-computer interaction, software engineering, and then other things that we might be more familiar with, like applied machine learning. So to motivate this, I want to talk about how machine learning is now increasingly being used in non-traditional settings, such as social science, government policy, and civic tech. So as one example, the US Census Bureau administers the American Community Survey each year. And this is the premier source for detailed population and housing information about the US. So one of our goals might be to, from partial responses to the survey, try to predict something about respondents or optimize administration of the survey or direct public policy interventions. But the challenge that we confront here is that this data in its raw form is extremely dirty and messy and hard to analyze. So just the data documentation itself is 132 pages, and it requires a lot of human insight to, figure out what the different coding patterns are, try to process missing values, and otherwise do the data preparation and feature engineering step that's needed to get this data useful for machine learning. Now, when we have this type of problem, there are maybe two approaches that computer scientists could take. The first is automation, but unfortunately, automation isn't really a great solution to this type of problem because of the fact that human intuition plays such a role in processing this data correctly. The other is collaboration. And I think that this is a little bit more promising. And the reason for that is because we know that humans need to be involved. And we could, in principle, kind of parallelize this work across different human beings. But the problem that we then confront is that there's no successful paradigms for large-scale collaboration in data science projects. So what I'm showing you here is the number of unique contributors to the largest open source projects on GitHub. And on the left, we can see projects that I've identified as software engineering projects. And you can see like the Linux kernel with over 20,000 contributors. And there are many software projects with hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of contributors. In contrast, data science projects that have attempted to be developed collaboratively are orders of magnitude smaller. And here I'm defining a data science project somewhat narrowly, as you might view it, as one that's actually creating a predictive model that could be used by others. And I think there are many reasons for this, but one reason that I particularly focus on is contrasting development approaches to software engineering versus data science. And there's 50 years of research and practice around software engineering processes, so I won't review it all, but instead I'll talk about the pull request model as it's exemplified on GitHub through my own interaction with it over the summer. So I'll show you me trying to contribute to the Pandas project, which some of you are probably familiar with. And I discovered a bug, and I created a bug report, and it turned out to be report number 35,744. And after reporting this bug, a maintainer commented saying, I agree this is a bug, and the solution was now up for grabs. And so I commented take, and that led an automated software bot to assign this issue to me. And that's something that we see commonly, these automated agents that are involved in the software engineering process. I then read over an extensive contributor guide in which I learned about creating a development environment, installing the package from source, writing tests, code coverage, and so on. I created a pull request in which I knocked out all of these items on the required checklist, at which point a continuous integration provider, in this case, Azure Pipelines, ran a test suite of almost 3 million tests on a matrix of about 15 different environments to make sure that my contribution was successful. Then the maintainers got back involved. They asked me to do a couple more things. And finally, my pull request was merged. So I'm happy to now be a contributor to Pandas. So that's a small achievement. But in contrast, the situation doesn't really look similar in data science. often for good reasons. But what we know based on research and practice in the HCI and software engineering communities is that workflows are relatively poor. And this definitely encompasses many different settings, whether it's building production ML systems at internet scale or creating scientific analyses. But what we do know is that there are low use of established techniques like version control, team-based development, modularity, and software testing, that practitioners spend much of their time on data wrangling and struggle to share results like computational notebooks, and that data scientists kind of by necessity need deep statistics knowledge and domain expertise, but this can come at the expense of learning strong software engineering fundamentals. So part of my research is asking the question, can we make data science development more like open source software development? And so one response to this question is the Ballet project, which I've been working on recently with collaborators. And it's a lightweight software framework for open source collaborative feature engineering on tabular data. What do I mean by that? Well, it's lightweight in the sense that it reuses open source infrastructure rather than creating our own application. It's a software framework rather than a platform, and it imposes minimal constraints on development style. It's open source and builds on top of the successful ecosystem that exists on GitHub, storing a data science pipeline in a GitHub repo and growing it using the pull request model. It's collaborative using a different time, different place collaboration style. And importantly, we focus on feature engineering on tabular data, which is a data modality where feature engineering really is important to successful projects, and where human intuition is something that often dictates whether the project is successful or not. Kind of talking through a conceptual framework here. So in software engineering, the product might be an application like COVIDpass or a library like TensorFlow. Whereas in data science development, it would be a feature engineering pipeline, say, to process these raw responses to the American Community Survey. A patch composes an application or library, and it might be a bug fix or a software feature. Whereas in our case, it's an individual feature definition that is then composed into a computational graph over the raw data into the extracted feature values. And the acceptance procedure to make sure that the patch contributions are acceptable is a unit test or integration test. But in our case, we create feature API testing and streaming feature definition selection. So I'm going to make this more concrete in the case of the Predict Census Income project, which we created using the Ballet framework to solve the problem I introduced about predicting something like personal income from raw responses to the American Community Survey. So here's how it works. We upload the raw survey responses, and we then create a GitHub repository that follows a certain structure that contains an empty feature engineering pipeline and an ML model. By passing the raw survey data through the code that's in this repo, we get our income predictions. And now we invite people to work on this project along with us and collaborate. And the task is pretty small and well-defined. We ask people to create and submit one feature to the project. So this is a project, you can check it out right now. And in fact, I'll encourage you to do so. And kind of as a preview of our results, we had 26 contributors contribute code and feature definitions to this project, which already makes it the 6th largest project by number of contributors on all of GitHub data science projects. We then conducted a mixed method software engineering case study analysis of this project to try to better understand how collaborative data science could work in practice. And what we find is that the hybrid human AI approach outperformed alternatives. So this is a pretty interesting finding in terms of how the human effort could best be deployed on these types of projects. Now, I tried to make this slide as shocking as possible because you could actually follow along with what I'm about to tell you in this live demo by going to this URL, and you too could write feature definitions on this shared project. And if you don't do so now because you want to pay attention to me, then do it during Muhammad's talk after me. No, I'm just joking. Do it later on your own time. So here's a stylized version of how the collaboration works. So we started off by creating this project from a template and uploading it to GitHub. It contains an invitation for collaborators to join the project. They're able to launch this project directly into a development environment we created called Assemblée. Now, Assemblée is built on top of Jupyter Lab and Binder, which is a cloud hosting provider for notebooks. So a developer now has this notebook available, and they're able to use our client libraries to explore the data. And they then use our framework to write a feature definition within their notebook. Now, this is usually where people get stuck and they say, oh, I have to clone the repo. I have to create a pull request. How do I do that? This isn't my expertise. But using our environment, you can actually select the feature definition that you've created and kind of just press one button, submit, to have Ballet automatically formulate this as a pull request to the upstream project on your behalf. I have some more details here about how the exact feature engineering kind of mini language works. So, I'll point out that basically a user is responsible for defining for requesting an input column from the raw data set they're working with, and then defining a sequence of transformers that each follow the scikit-learn style fit transform paradigm and may or may not learn some parameters of the feature engineering pipeline from the training set. Now, once the feature definition has been written and submitted as a pull request, we can see there's actually this nice one-to-one correspondence between the feature definition in someone's notebook and the pull request that ends up created automatically. And basically, that pull request just inserts that feature definition in a single Python module at a predetermined location within the project path. So this makes it possible for that to be collected along with all the other feature definitions. This submitted feature definition is then tested in an automatic process in which we repurpose continuous integration providers to run our test suite of feature API tests and a streaming feature definition selection algorithm, which we create tailored for this situation. For that, I refer you to our paper. Now, if that validation is successful, then the feature can automatically be accepted into the project. And we can see that this is done so by Ballet bot, kind of another analogy to the software engineering development process that we saw earlier. As a result, the master branch of this project always contains only high quality features that could then be used at any time by a consumer. So we can see that someone could install this project and they could then use the trained feature engineering pipeline to extract feature values for their own data, following the same schema, or they could use it as the input to their modeling process for the same data set. So I have some pretty pictures for you. In the interest of time, we're gonna zoom through these. But this is showing you how the Ensemble interface works. So as I was saying, we did an analysis of this predict census income project. And we've invited a diverse sample of people to join the collaborative project. They filled out a brief survey about their background on a variety of different aspects. And we then gave them the same task that I told you about earlier, to contribute a feature definition. Afterwards, they then filled out another survey about their experience. So in our analysis, we then had a bunch of different sources of information. We had surveys. We also instrumented the Ensemble development environment to collect usage statistics. We did static analysis of the code contributions, and we also compared the resulting feature engineering pipeline to several human expert and AutoML baselines. Some key results: 27 people completed the study, and they were a mixture of beginners, intermediates, and experts across a variety of these different aspects. 26 of them successfully submitted a feature definition, and of these, 22 successfully merged a feature. And something that I think is really cool is that out of the 9 people in the case study who said that they had never once contributed to an open source project, and that could be some of us in the audience as well, all 9 of them were successfully able to use this collaboration style to successfully create a pull request to the repo using the Ensemble development environment. As I was saying earlier, we found that comparing a number of alternatives, the best ML performance, the best F1 score of predicting personal income, came from taking the collaboratively generated feature engineering pipeline, running it on the raw data, taking the extracted feature values, and then passing it to AutoML, where the community has been much more successful at automating that aspect of the data science process. More qualitatively, we found that both beginners experienced moderate to low task workload, and that domain expertise had the strongest relationship with participant outcomes across a variety of measures that we considered, such as TLX, which is a standard task workload metric, the number of minutes they spent on the task, and the ML performance of their feature definitions. So this was really encouraging to us because we think that there's a big untapped pool of people that have expertise in data science or have a lot of domain expertise, for example, on this specific government survey, but are not necessarily out there contributing to open source data science projects. And we think that this is one way of bridging the gap. So with that, I want to invite your questions. You're able to read our paper, browse the project source code, install it on your own computer, and talk to us. And I also want to plug this bonus opportunity of dropping your email in this form to participate in a future collaborative data science project with no commitment guaranteed. So with that, thank you for your attention.